everybody. Waking up. Again, this music comes from pretzel.rocks, cool website. I do like their music selection. It's all free, you know. It's all no copyright stuff and royalty-free music, which is awesome, absolutely awesome. And I think there's some great artists that do that. You know, there's some really terrific artists that offer that kind of free music. It's just great. You know, it's just kind of the love of music in general that keeps them going. Yeah, just double check my volume on my microphone here. So, how's everybody doing? Guess what? It's Friday. Friday. Yeah. All right. So, with that means it is your opportunity to come and ask me whatever you want. And right now, we've only got 2 viewers. That's right, 2 people. 2 people watching this right now, which is interesting because I do tend to get a lot more views of the videos after they're recorded and posted than I get of people watching the stream. And it may just be a timing thing. It may just simply be because it's, 7:30 in the morning. But this is when I am just about ready to go to work and I have to grab my coffee. So, because of that, I figured everybody else, especially all across America, I'm on the Pacific Coast. Everybody else is probably working or getting ready for work. So, why not have it at this time? But if you guys think that there might be a better time to do this, I'm okay with that. But I think Coffee with Steve kind of generally indicates it's going to be in the mornings. And if you guys come and watch the videos afterwards, hey, that's cool by me. I appreciate you guys even coming here and being a part of the channel at all, because that's awesome. That's just great stuff. So I am going to leave it open to your guys' topics. So Fridays is where you guys get to come on and ask me anything. And you guys get to set the tone, get to set the topic, and discuss everything. But I always have a contingency plan on Fridays, just in case of this, where, not very many people show up and I don't get any questions. One of those 2 people is probably my wife, so thanks. But at least she does come and watch my show. So there's some news out there today. There's quite a bit of news, and this is kind of what I do when again nobody's here to really set the tone for me. So I'm gonna still do it. It's just a little bit more, loosely put together. I just kind of like, hey, it looks like an interesting headline. Oh, that looks like an interesting headline. It just kind of puts stuff together, and I don't really have it fully gone through. I haven't gone and highlighted anything to help me figure out what are the points that I want to talk about. I just kind of have, that's an interesting headline. Let's go take a look at it. So, some interesting news that dropped down today, and it's kind of sad, is, of course, and you guys probably have already heard, Mr. Grumpy Cat himself has passed away at the ripe old age of 7. Apparently there was a urinary tract problem, and he passed away. So really probably one of the more well-known memes and figureheads of memes. Poor Grumpy Cat. I remember first encountering it, and I thought, Grumpy Cat was hilarious. And they did, the owner of this cat really did a fantastic job of creating that, I'm not going to say use, because it wasn't really about using, right? They just utilized the cat. They really represented kind of this grumpiness, but still cheerful attitude that I think really deserves to be commended. And I think, unfortunately, with the passing of Grumpy Cat, there probably isn't going to be as much said about, there's not going to be as many memes about Grumpy Cat. Nothing really new is going to come out. It's just going to be kind of the same ones regurgitated, and that's going to be kind of sad, but I think that they did a really good job of creating an image. Okay? So meme and animal lovers out there will be saddened to hear that the internet star Grumpy Cat has passed away. The news was revealed by Grumpy Cat's owner on her official Twitter account. Grumpy Cat's owners said the feline died on Tuesday, May 14th, at home in the arms of her mommy. So this actually happened on Tuesday. The cause of death was complications from a recent urinary tract infection. We are unimaginably heartbroken to announce the loss of our beloved Grumpy Cat. Despite care from top professionals as well as from her very loving family, Grumpy encountered complications from a recent urinary tract infection that unfortunately became too high for her to overcome. She passed away peacefully in the morning of Tuesday, May 14th, at home in the arms of her mommy, Tabitha. Besides being our baby and a cherished member of the family, Grumpy Cat has helped millions of people smile around the world, even when times were tough. Her spirit will continue to live on through her fans everywhere. Grumpy's family, Tabitha, Brian, and Crystal. So yeah, again, like, it's sad when you have kind of this internet sensation, this internet personality that we all have kind of come to know and love. And I think it's kind of a universal, Grumpy Cat has been a universal symbol for a lot of us about, when we don't have our coffee. Maybe some of us even when we do have our coffee. Yeah, some days are grumpier than others, and it's really, really sad. So her chosen name was actually Tartar Sauce, in case anybody wanted to know. And it was a she. It was a girl cat, a female cat. So we salute you, owners and Grumpy Cat. We hope that everything is well in that family, and it's really sad news. But thank you for all the service that you guys have done in trying to make the internet and the world a little bit better of a place. Okay, so moving on into what you guys typically are here for, and that's all this, programming language stuff. Oh, look, we're up to 3 viewers. Thank you, 3 viewers. Don't forget to drop your questions or your topics, the things you want to talk about in the chat. That way I know what you guys want to talk about, because if you don't tell me that, it's kind of hard to know what you want to say. All right. Okay, so ZDNet says, want one of the best paid entry-level jobs? Learn this 20-year-old programming language. 20 years. That is actually an understatement. Java is older than 20 years. But, okay, whatever. I think it's 25 years. I think it was in, when was Java created? When was Java created? Java. Yep, 1991. So it's almost 30 years old. Almost 30 years old. But I'll forgive them. All right, new figures show Java developers as the highest paid entry-level role in America. That's interesting. And actually is kind of backed up by what we're seeing in the industry as far as for education and requirements by our partners of who wants to employ, what are they looking for? What are the skills and languages that our partners are asking us to provide for them in students? And yeah, Java's really, really hot right now, which is weird to me. Like, I'm not really sure what the appeal of Java is. I really don't. I do it. I write the curriculum for Java. I write Java code. It's an okay language. It's very, very similar to C#. And in that way, there's a lot of things that I like about Java. However, it just feels very underwhelming when you're writing Java. You're not really you're not amazed at what you can do with the language. And it also doesn't feel like Java's going anywhere. I don't think that it's a weird situation for Java. Java is still one of the, if not, I think it's the most widely used back-end language for all of the services that you build, for all the, for writing APIs, for all the back-end development. Java, I think, is still the #1 language. So there's still a lot of popularity. There's still a lot of requirements. There's a lot of companies that are still supporting Java or using Java. But you look at the landscape of Java and I see landmines, right? Like I'm seeing Google, we talked about it on this channel all the time. Google is basically dropping Java as a primary language and they're telling everybody go to Kotlin. That was recently announced that all new features are going to be Kotlin first and Java comes later. And then we also just saw, and I talked about yesterday, how Oracle has basically screwed over the Eclipse Foundation, which they're a part of, right? They have this veto vote on Eclipse Foundation, and they're using it to basically cause all sorts of havoc after handing over Java over to it, right? After handing Java Enterprise over to Eclipse Foundation, they basically then said, you can't even use the name Java. Like, why did you hand this over to us if we can't even call it what it is? I don't know. There's some strange stuff going on there. I don't know that I would. Other than the fact that if you're looking for an entry level job, this does make sense to go to, right? Because it's one of the best paying jobs. There's a ton of demand for it. And it's a programming language. It's something that gets you started. It gets you in the industry. So by all means, go learn it. Right? Java's been a language that gets taught in computer science programs for years. Since the 90s, Java's been one of those languages. So yeah, go learn it. Go learn Java. Be fruitful and multiply, right? Go ahead. Just know that the future of Java is going to be, I think, pretty flatline. I don't think it's going to grow. It doesn't mean that it's going to contract. It doesn't mean that it's going to go anywhere. It doesn't mean that Java is doomed, but it does mean that's not where the tip of the spear is right now in terms of technology. The new Java program, the Java programming language may date back to the 1990s, but new Java programmers are still landing some of the best paid starter jobs in the U.S. Figures released this week by Glassdoor Economic Research show Java developer as the 8th highest paid entry-level role in America, with a median base salary of $72,000. These figures are based on wages reported by workers aged 25 and younger on the Glassdoor job site during 2018. It is not the first time Java has been singled out as a well-rewarded programming language. Earlier this year, Glassdoor said Java developers were enjoying some of the fastest-growing salaries in the U.S., with median pay increasing at almost twice the rate as for U.S. workers as a whole. The healthy prospect for Java developers is broadly the same in the UK, where Hayes Recruitment found they were among the tech workers the largest percentage increases in pay in 2018. Strong demand and high job satisfaction also helped Java developers be crowned as the 22nd best job in America in a Glassdoor report earlier this year. Java has a broad range of users, serving as the language of choice for server-side business software for more than a decade, and is one of the primary languages for developing Android apps, although Google recently said it will prioritize new features for the Kotlin language on Android. As the nature of roles that fall under the title Java developer, a search on Glassdoor reveals a mix of jobs writing server-side code for websites and enterprise services. Yeah. Data scientist is the best paid entry-level role. Yeah, and we actually offer a data science program at Wazoo, and it's growing in popularity, and Meredith does a fantastic job of teaching over there. So yeah, that's data scientist, software engineer, product manager, investment banking analyst, product designer, UX designer. Look at this. Look at all of the 10 highest paying entry-level jobs in the US. What do these have in common? Data scientist, software engineer, product manager, investment banking analyst. That's really the first one that I see on here that's not software or technology based. Product designer, UX designer, implementation consultant, Java developer, systems engineer, and software developer. All of these, except for that one right there. That's the only one on this list that's not somehow technology related. So yeah, this is a great field to be in, isn't it? It's a fantastic place to be. Another thing. So Microsoft unveils full stack web templates for Visual Studio Code. So Microsoft has Visual Studio Code, which I started out, using Visual Studio. I think like a lot of C# developers and .NET developers, it was just kind of what you do. You use Visual Studio. And then they came out with Visual Studio Code. And I remember when I first started at what is now WazU, we had our curriculum written for Visual Studio Code for the C# project, for the C# track. So I was very concerned. I was like, what? This is C#, this is .NET. We do Visual Studio, right? We do the full Visual Studio for our development. And it's just, there's not very many studios that I could possibly imagine that do C# development in Visual Studio Code. Like, where's this coming from? Well, I'm happy to say that my opinion has changed. Initially, in Visual Studio is really good because of all of the tooling, because of all the utilities and ways that things are easy to work with, right? But that means you have, like, let me see if I can come up with a better analogy here. So let's say you're learning to be a pilot, and what you learn how to fly without, the very first plane you learn to fly is like a 737. You got all these bells and whistles and instrumentation. Are you actually flying the plane, or is the computer flying the plane? Are you learning how to fly, or are you just learning how to run a computer, right? So, what's the fun in that? What's the joy in that? What do you actually know about flight? Are you actually good at flying, or are you just actually good at managing this computer system? That's kind of how I'm starting to see Visual Studio versus Visual Studio Code, because Visual Studio Code is basically, you're working with the actual tools. You're working with the actual command line. You're seeing how to run things. You're seeing how to program things. You're going into the XML and making changes to the properties. You're making adjustments in the low level and understanding what those changes do, as opposed to Visual Studio, which just basically means, like, here's this user interface that's graphical, tell us what you want, and we'll go in the back end and make it happen for you. Are you really learning things? Are you really learning about what's going on? Do you really have full control, or are you just kind of relying on the tools? And if you're just relying on the tools, you are tightly coupled to those tools, right? If I know Visual Studio Code, which gives me a much lower level understanding of things, then it doesn't matter which IDE I move to from there. I can do Visual Studio Code. I can go to Eclipse. I can go to Java. Java, NetBeans. I can do whatever. No, not NetBeans. What was the... Oh, shoot. Okay. Well, anyway, I can go to whatever IDE I need to in order to manage and understand how coding is working. And then I can also learn other languages and understand how those other languages work. And I don't get locked into one specific IDE, because I've always done it in Visual Studio. I've got all these great tools, but the only way I know how to do anything is through the tools. That's a problem. And now my opinion's completely changed on this. I think Visual Studio Code is a fantastic editor, and Microsoft is doing a fantastic job of making it worth its salt, right? And that includes now web-driven or wizard-driven web templates, which is an extension for Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to have to check this out. I'm going to spend some time probably and take a look at this. But it basically helps you with the creation of web apps, including React, Node, and Azure services. So I'm probably going to have to go check that out. Within the wizard, WebTS can add pages as needed, providing a name for each one. So it sounds like they're kind of adding more tooling for things, and that's okay. If that's what makes people come to the platform, then by all means. It was built using TypeScript. That's interesting. And the React UI framework. So Microsoft is using React for some of the tools that they're building. That's interesting. That's kind of like burying you're burying the lead, right? That's what they call it. So anyway, okay, that kind of caught my eye. Let's see, something else that caught my eye is more Microsoft news, is Sony and Microsoft team up on cloud-based gaming and entertainment. Remember how Google announced recently, what was it called? Stella, right? I think that was the platform that they were talking about, where it's going to be a streaming service for all your games. Don't forget to drink your coffee. If you don't have coffee, how can you code? Okay. Sony and Microsoft team up on cloud-based gaming and entertainment. If you can't beat them, join them. Yeah, again, like Microsoft is doing some stuff here with partnerships, and that is just amazing. And there's Satya, right? This is crazy. In an unlikely turn of events, Microsoft and Sony announced today that they're tackling the future of entertainment. The companies are planning to work together to build future cloud solutions in Microsoft Azure that will support gaming and content streaming. A merger of PlayStation and Xbox. Like, what? What? I gotta admit, like, I'm I'm one of those people that will, if I was running a company, if I was running a business, and somebody walked into my store and said, "Do you have this?" And I should rightly have it, but I don't, right? I should have it in my business, but I don't have it. How would I respond to that? Well, the way I would respond to that is, if I know my competitor has that thing, I'm okay with sending my customer over there. You know, that's fine. They offer it. They have it. You go over there. I will let you know that that's where you can go. Okay? Because in my opinion, the more that we work together, even though we are competing companies, the more we work together on certain things, the better off we are. If I don't try to tarnish the reputation of my competitor, it just makes me look better. And then hopefully they return in kind. And if there's something that I offer as a service that they don't have, they will feel like, you know, hey, Steve has been an outstanding person and he is sending customers our way, even though he's a competitor. And here's this customer that's saying they need something and we know Steve has it. Like, I'm all for competition. I think competition is great. It helps to reduce prices. But if you can reduce the animosity in the marketplace for each other, that's even better for everybody. And that's what I'm glad to see here. I'm glad to see Microsoft and Sony kind of coming together on stuff. You could say there is a concern here, though, right? Because now we were talking about kind of these collusion issues, monopolies kind of situation, right? So we'll see where this partnership goes. It has more to do with content streaming and gaming, right? So it's not necessarily like two tech giants that have been at each other's throat about everything. They have been for a long time. I mean, Xbox, the rivalry between PlayStation and Xbox has been ongoing for a very, very long time. So this is a very weird partnership, to say the least, because it's so out of the norm. But the partnership effectively allows Sony to tap Microsoft's technology to help with areas that the company has struggled with. Sony has taken heat for years over slow download speeds, something that typically hasn't plagued Xbox owners. Using Azure data centers and eventually moving over to Microsoft's cloud solutions should allow Sony to focus on its own platform rather than trying to solve technical issues. Sony will also tap Microsoft's artificial intelligence services to improve the user interface in its products. So what does Microsoft get out of the deal? Aside from adding a major customer to its already very profitable cloud business, the company will gain access to Sony's image sensors, which it plans to use to create new intelligent image sensor solutions. The companies appear primarily focused on how to improve the functionality of the sensors for enterprise customers, though consumer solutions and improved Kinect-style system, for instance, are also possible. And what's also interesting about that is the Kinect system that Microsoft develops is what's in the HoloLens, which is a product I am very, very anxious to see become much more commercialized and popular amongst, out there in the wild. 30 comments. let's wade ourselves in through the comments and see what people have to say here. Let's show more comments. Okay. Microsoft. So Alexander says Microsoft will also get all Sony's online gamer user data, which could help them as well with gaming trends. This is really great news. I hope it means MS will give up their Xbox brand soon and focus on things it actually knows how to do well. Really? I got to know some people that worked at Microsoft, that worked on the Xbox project, and there's some top quality people. I can't really. Microsoft does some good things with Xbox. I like the Xbox brand. I use it as my primary entertainment system. Like, it's what's hooked up to my main TV. I have both. I have a PlayStation and an Xbox, and Xbox is what runs our entertainment system. Yeah. You mean like the Xbox 360 totally beat the PS3 until the end of their gen? Good point. LOL, as much as you seem to know the inner workings and bank balance sheet of the Xbox division at Microsoft, it seems they don't share your feelings and have already hinted at more consoles. In fact, I don't even know why you care. If you don't want Xbox, don't buy it. Oh, that's exactly the point. If you don't want it, don't buy it. Why do you have to knock on it? If you want a digital streaming service, well, that will come. It will still be branded Xbox, so what you are asking doesn't make any sense. I personally don't see your issue here because you have many choices, and their losses aren't your losses, are they? That's right. See, that's a good point. This is kind of the division I think I see way too much of. It's if you are not on my side, you are terrible. That's it. I am a PlayStation fan, therefore Xbox is horrible. Why? Xbox isn't bad. PlayStation isn't bad. They're just different. If you like one, good. Stick with it. You don't have to knock on everybody who likes the other platform. That's silly. The same thing, like I would say, again, Java's not my favorite language. Does that mean I go around telling everybody who does Java that they're terrible people? Why would you use such a horrible, awful programming language? Like, that would be silly to do, wouldn't it? I don't know. It seems that is the personality that I think is starting to prevail more and more online. And because it's kind of our personality that we're seeing online, it's also kind of driving our culture, because our culture is kind of based on internet right now. So if that's the personality that wins the day, that's kind of what's going on. And I'm glad to see people doing pushback like this, right? I'm glad to see people kind of saying, what's wrong with you? Microsoft should never give up the Xbox brand. We need both players on the market. They push each other to be better they push each other to the better for us. They also have plenty of cash to throw at it, so they don't care if they're second place. Unlike Sony, that's been breaking itself apart and selling its pieces for the last few years. I don't know that I agree with that either. I happen to know some game developers for Sony, and I think they're good. Center Negative says, as the saying goes, your opinions are bad and you should feel bad. Yeah, right? That's exactly it, right? Your opinions are wrong, therefore you should feel awful. Oh, Google Stadia. That's right, it was Stadia, not Stella. Xbox, PlayStation, PlayX Station Box. Yeah, I like that. X Station. So Playbox? Playhawks. Okay. Bye-bye Google Stadia and Apple Arcade. Maybe Nintendo will like to join in. Yeah. So that's a good point, and that's where I was kind of thinking when I initially read this was, this is their effort. This is kind of Google. This is Xbox, Microsoft, and Sony kind of coming together to say, hey, Google's coming out with something. We should do something about that. Like, we've been the market space. Let's keep it that way by coming up with some way of like nudging them out and not making them appear so popular. I think that's exactly what's going on. Nintendo will be receiving Xbox Live services soon. I am betting you will be able to stream your Xbox games on the Switch. Interesting. I didn't know. It's Azure, baby. I'll tell you what, Azure's really, really good. I like the Azure platform for providing services. They do. It's just a nice. Their interface is a lot easier to understand. Their products are a lot easier to understand. When you try to wade through like AWS and Amazon Web Services, I get lost. I really do. Center Negative says, so it essentially is a form of collusion. They're just teaming up to box out Stadia from their market. Yeah, I think that is it. I think that is it. Now, here's the thing. So when it comes to collusion or when it comes to monopolies, I have great fear in what's going to happen with that, right? Because they tend to drive the market. Now, that can be good and that can be bad because sometimes you do need stewardship. Sometimes you need something to kind of solidify the technology around. So that's one of the reasons why back in the 90s, I was a proponent of Microsoft. And it's a weird position for me because typically, again, 95% of the time, I am on the side of free market. I am on the side of break up monopolies. I am on the side of we need more diversity in the marketplace. 95, probably even 98% of the time, I'm gonna increase that. On almost every case, I am for making there be more competition in the marketplace. But what Microsoft did, you have to give them credit. They basically delivered the PC revolution to the people. They did it, right? Apple tried to do it, and they did an okay job early, but the only reason why we even have PCs is because of Microsoft, right? Like we had, I don't know why that one's for review. We had PCs before Microsoft, right? They were a thing. They just weren't in your home. And Microsoft made that happen because they were very monolithic, right? Because they had kind of this monopoly. And they drove the whole Windows brand was basically what drove PCs to the consumer. They figured out what it took in order to make a PC desirable for people. And there could be some discussion about, well, Apple came up with it first. Sure, I totally, hey, you're right. Apple came up with it first. Microsoft just kind of came along. They just happened to figure out a way to make it right for the customer. And because they were so good at it, people used their product. And as long as that's the situation, I'm okay with that, right? I'm okay with a company being so good at what they do without any government intervention that people just use it because it's a great product. It's when a company is getting favorability through government programs, or the government is colluding on making them the number one monopoly, like too big to fail kind of thing. That's when I have a problem, right? When I see the government who basically has the ability to use that big giant stick to kind of whack over the competition, and there's collusion between the government and these companies, that's when I have a serious problem. What I don't really have a serious problem is when two companies are working together to try to make things better. I don't have a problem with that. So we'll see how this goes. We'll see what kind of partnership this is. And if it turns bad, I'm going to point it out. You know me, I'm going to be the first one to say, you guys should not have allowed this to happen. You guys shouldn't have done this. And if shame on me for not saying so earlier, I'll be the first to say that, to admit that I was wrong. But I think this is a good partnership. I think this is going to deliver more services to Sony developers, and we'll see where we go with Microsoft. So we'll see what kind of happens there. The data thing, I think, is something people are worried about too. I'll put this up. Thanks for posting this, Center Negative. So this is XKCD, which is it's just kind of a nice little web comic that's really great. So how standards proliferate. See AC chargers, character encodings, instant messaging, etc. Situation. There are 14 competing standards. 14, ridiculous. We need to develop one universal standard that covers everyone's use cases. Yeah. Situation, there are now 15 competing standards. That's correct. That's exactly how it works. Yeah. All right. Not sure why Sony went with the least reliable cloud and massive competitor. Maybe MS gave them a lot of money is my guess. Again, this is somebody who, honestly, I don't like saying bad things about people, but you're ignorant. You don't understand. You do not understand this architecture. If you think Azure is the least reliable cloud service, if you believe that, you don't understand. You just simply don't know. Center Negative says, Sony is also notorious for creating proprietary data file storage formats that only work with their products. So I see that being a roadblock to full cooperation with MS, especially since Microsoft is going more toward open source. You could very well be right. But the converse is also possible. Maybe Sony has to open up their standards. Maybe they make it so that their formats have to become more compliant. You know, we don't know. Maybe. So, LOL, think you know Azure? Your comment proves you don't. Okay, getting a little bit negative here. I know I already went after him. MS gave no one any money. It's a simple choice. Either go with AWS or Azure or build it yourself. And then there's also Google Cloud. But, of course, they don't want to team up with Google Cloud because Google is, you know, I don't know. Well, maybe they would. Maybe working with them might have been a good choice. Okay, anyway. Either go with AWS or Azure or build it yourself. MS is already working on a very enhanced streaming system, and it's stupid for Sony to not take advantage of that. With AWS, they would still have to build everything out themselves, same as if they went it alone. This is a good move by Sony because it means every gamer on both platforms have the same experience, and devs only need to know how to work with one type of service. Look at that. Somebody that understands the developer perspective is replying on this. That's fantastic. The reluctance came from Sony, not Microsoft, when it came to crossplay because, you know, Sony is big and mighty. Quote for the players. For the players of Sony only. This doesn't sound at all like a team up. They're paying for each other's tech that are cloud-based tech. Yeah, that's teaming up. Yes, you can pay for your fellow partner, or you can pay for someone else's service. That's still teaming up. Oh, man. What do you think? They're just going to freely exchange all the time and there's no such thing as a partnership when money's being handed over? Eesh. A surprise, but also a needed partnership. Microsoft doesn't want Amazon AWS gaining an upper hand on game streaming. They know Google is competing against them both, and working with Sony assures competition is healthy between them both. This is a surprise, but I must say the internet speed on my Xbox is much faster than the PS4. This is something I noticed when downloads and general navigation, so I can see why they would do it. Yeah, when you do the check to see your connection speeds on the PlayStation, I noticed that the connection speed always seems to indicate much lower than my actual speeds. Embrace, extend, extinguish. The Microsoft motto of how to deal with competitors lives on. That has been so... So I don't remember. I know I've heard that quote before. I don't remember exactly what it's from. Maybe somebody could point it out. But that's been what people have been saying about Microsoft because they don't know that Microsoft has been reinvented. This is somebody who still lives in the early 2000s or the 1990s. And they don't understand Microsoft is different. They don't believe it. They don't want to believe Microsoft is different. How could Microsoft be different? Steve Ballmer is not the CEO anymore, okay? He's not. That's not the direction they're going. If you look at the portfolio of what Microsoft is doing, you can't possibly believe this anymore. Yep, this new Microsoft is worse today than they have ever been in their entire history. They're even going so far as helping the communists in China with facial recognition tech that is already being used against Chinese citizens. Not to mention EEE is well underway against Linux and open source. Really against Linux and open source by embracing the kernel. and releasing the kernel with Windows 10. That is so going against Linux. Yep, exactly. So Center Negative says, that's the kind of person that still spells Microsoft as Microsoft with a $sign or $, and still thinks Ballmer is running the show. Yep, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. I fear that all tech giants have fallen to the dark side. Microsoft, Google, Apple, all of them. There is no good guy anymore. They all died off. The tech industry is in dark ages now. The golden days are no more, it seems. I can't wait for the tech renaissance. No idea when or what that will be. Look, I kind of understand where that perspective is coming from, but at the same time, I don't think that Microsoft being lumped in there is quite accurate. Maybe. Okay, Microsoft is the only one of those that's not in Silicon Valley. Just think about that for a second. They're in Seattle, though, right? They're in Redmond. So there is a little bit of a difference, but not much, right? What's the difference between San Francisco and Seattle? About 1,000 miles distance between them. That's basically the only difference. But Microsoft, I do have to say, is a little bit less infringing, I guess you could say. I don't know. They're not as demanding. They're not as, but maybe just because they're not in that spotlight. They don't exactly have they're not dealing with social media issues like Apple and Google does. So maybe they've been able to get away with it. And maybe that's why my impression of them is a little bit less negative than it is of Google and Apple. But we'll see. You should reorder your list with Apple at the top, Amazon and Google second, Facebook a close third. Yep, that is what I would agree with. Microsoft is nowhere near that. And look, he's got 4 likes for that. There's even more replies. Ridiculous paranoid crap. How is Microsoft going to extinguish them when they're only supplying a service to Sony? Somebody gets it. And FFS, for fuck's sake. I can't count how many years people have been telling Microsoft to embrace open source. The Linux kernel is going to be on Windows. Microsoft don't own Linux, so it still exists independently of Windows. As usual, paranoid BS about a company that has evolved into something totally different in the last 20 years. Bingo! Heskin, right on, man. You have nailed it. And I like your Order 66. Oh, no, that's a reply to Order 66. God. What better way to maintain your desktop dominance than by allowing people to use the competition OS from within Windows itself without ever having to leave Windows? Buy up the support outlets like GitHub and start offering open source through Windows itself, all the while attaching telemetry to see what's popular and what users are doing so the company can constantly be aware of whatever they need to take control of next. People are such sheep. Yeah. Center Negative says, I'd say it's the converse. Microsoft is becoming more enlightened, whereas Google has removed their do not evil mantra from all their materials, and Facebook is ending up in front of Congress. Although all these guys are signing up for questionable Department of Defense contracts that are causing employees to revolt. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, a big tech giant is being asked by the military to do stuff. Any company that is trying to make money is going to look at that and go, woohoo, money. Okay? And some of them are even having the fortitude to say, no, I don't think so. We're going to turn away from that kind of money. And look, I don't think military is evil. It can be, in the wrong hands. And again, this is why the power in the military is so important. And where does the power lie with the military? It was much better served when the president didn't have direct control over the deployments of military forces, when it was basically Congress and, when it was the Congress that had to determine and approve of military action. But then the commander-in-chief could, from that point, kind of be the decision maker once we were engaged. Right? That's kind of the way that our Constitution was originally structured. And we've kind of gone away from that. Now, all of a sudden, the president can deploy troops whenever and wherever and however. That's a problem. I don't like that. And I'm getting into politics here a little bit, but that doesn't mean military isn't inherently bad. It isn't inherently good. It's just a tool. It is a tool that can be used, when used properly, can do good things. When it is used improperly, it can do horrible things. And we should always buttress against that by having a system of management in place that prevents the terrible from happening. And right now, I don't know that we really have that, especially when the president could at any moment press a button and fire off rockets, right? That's the kind of power that we have to be very, very concerned about. Anyway, okay, we should probably move off for that. So the last thing I just wanted to point out here, and I got to end the stream here real soon, over 12,000 MongoDB databases deleted by unistellar attackers. Yeah, big stuff there. That's kind of big news. 12,000 databases have been deleted over the last 3 weeks with only a message left behind asking the owners of the database to contact the cyber extortionists to have the data restored. Although not on this scale, the types of attacks targeting publicly accessible MongoDB databases have happened at least early 2017. Attackers looking for exposed data servers using binary edge or Shodan search engines delete them and demand a ransom for their restoration services. This has become a pretty large problem. Ransomware is becoming a serious issue online. And I don't know what MongoDB is going to do about this, because it's entirely possible that some of these companies that were using these databases could maybe go after MongoDB. Depends on their setup, depends on the situation. Center Negative says, from the employee's perspective, they just don't want to be responsible for work that takes human lives, enemy combatant otherwise, so they don't want their code being used to help the military or the police. And I respect that. I do. I respect that. Because it is a dangerous thing to do. It is a dangerous thing to be building technology that makes it easier to kill people, right? And if you don't want to do that, I commend you for it. If you want to be more of a pacifist, all the more power to you. Again, I'm not going to knock that position. If that's what you believe, that's what you believe, and good for you. I happen to have a slightly different opinion. It is that, again, I think the military can be used for good. Is it always used for good? Absolutely not. Has everything the U.S. ever done as far as military campaigns been good? Absolutely not. There's also kind of this problem of once you deploy troops, you don't have total control over how their missions turn out or how those people react to the conditions. A lot of people in the there have been several cases in the military where people just kind of go rogue, right? They're under tremendous amount of stress and they make really, really bad decisions that cost people their lives. That's a horrible side effect of military combat. Does that mean that you should throw the baby out with the bathwater? We should just get rid of the military? We should just never do any sort of foreign assistance, I guess would be the way I would put it. There are times where, what about Bosnia-Herzegovina, right? What about when we interfered a little bit there? Was that a terrible thing? There was genocide going on. Should we have just stayed out of it? Because, we have this belief that we should be pacifist. Was that doing anybody any good doing that? I don't know. I don't know that it's a tough issue to grapple with. I don't think the military is totally bad. I don't think they're totally good. I think the military should be neutral and should always be neutral. I don't think that they can be used as a tool, and by and large, on the overall grand scale, if you look at the total body of work, I guess you could say, of how the military has been used by the U.S., has it been a force for good or has it been a force for bad? How has it been used one way or the other? I would say in total, looking at the overall scope of what the military has done, I think by and large, it's been used for good. It doesn't mean there haven't been really, really bad things. There have been really bad things, and we still see the repercussions of that today. And it's an unfortunate situation, but it is life. Uh, I hate, I fear the day where the U.S. is not the number one military might in the world. I fear that. I think we should all fear that because we are in an unprecedented time of peace. There has been no other time in history like this that I can think of. I mean, it's just been an amazing, amazing period of peace. And there's been struggle. There have been skirmishes. There's Syria. There's Iraq. There's, all of these other places. But overall, the world is in a pretty stable situation right now. Other than terrorism, right? We're in a pretty stable place. Compared to our history, if you are a student of history and you look at things, we went through 2 world wars, and you go back further than that, you go into like Rome was constantly at war. You look at any other time in history, and it is fraught with nothing but military conquests, and military being used not for forces of good, but for forces of just resources or difference of ideology. That's our history. So if you remove the American military from the equation and say we shouldn't be the number one power anymore, somebody else should be there, who's going to be that military power? Luckily, before World War I, the military power on Earth was the British and to a certain extent, like the Spanish, right? They had their time too, where they were there too. And you look at the Spanish time, and of course there's the conquest, there's the conquistadors, etc. But when it was the British, we pretty much had a pretty decent Western civilization. We had a pretty decent period of time, though we did have wars. Obviously, the Revolutionary War of America was fought over trying to gain independence. And I would still say that even during that time, it was a relatively quiet, calm, peaceful world that they lived in at that time. So we've had a pretty unprecedented period of time from British dominance of the world to American dominance of the world. But both the British and the Americans have kind of the same philosophies, right? About liberation, about freedom, right? The freedoms of the people come first. You shouldn't be dictated. You shouldn't have autocratic governments. You shouldn't have, some sort of like communist system. You should have the freedom of the people to choose, rightfully so. That has been the dominant ideology of the globe for centuries now. And so we've had this really tremendous amount of peace, except for when we have world wars, right? We have these world wars if you think about like what Germany would have done, not in World War I. World War I that was probably one of the most unfortunate wars that ever happened, was World War I. It really started for no other reason than just, hey, we've got a bunch of weapons. That's when military goes bad. World War I is when military is used for bad things, for bad purposes, and there's no reason it should have happened. There just really it should not have happened. Somebody got assassinated because of political maneuverings between monarchies. And that caused the world to erupt in total chaos. That's when military is bad, right? World War II was a very definitive good guy versus bad guy, right? I think you could say that, except for the Japanese might be a little bit of a different situation. I don't know that you could say that was bad guy versus good guy. It was imperialism. There was definitely a sense amongst the Japanese that they deserved what they were taking. And that had its roots in World War I, because Japan was actually, a lot of people don't know this, but Japan was actually an ally to the U.S. and Great Britain during World War I. And they had invaded China a little bit, and that caused some animosity, obviously, between the Chinese and the Japanese. But the Japanese were on the American and Allied side, And when the Treaty of Versailles was signed, Japan basically got screwed. They got nothing. They got zip. And that was the start of their animosity towards the other superpowers. And you got to also understand that the culture of Japan, even prior to that, was very isolated, right? They did not allow foreigners in their country for a very, very long time. They would kill you. If a foreign ship appeared on the shore of Japan, they would destroy it. They didn't. If you tried to land on the beaches of Japan, they would kill you. They didn't care what situation it was. They went after you. No foreigners allowed. That was the history of Japan for a very, very long time. So then they get involved, not too long after that period, they get involved in World War I. They help out the Allies. They help out the winning side of that conflict. Okay, I say winning side, but really World War I don't think there were any real winners. But they won, and then they helped with that, they helped immensely with that. Then what happened? They get screwed. If you basically help one side win an engagement, win the war, and then you don't get anything out of that, yeah, there's going to be some animosity towards those people that you thought were your allies. And that's what happened in World War II, is they saw America as that rival now, right? Like, why should we work with you? You guys screwed us last time around. So there's kind of this natural, I can probably go ahead and remove the, there we go, go back to me. There was kind of a natural inborn, built-in, animosity on the part of Japan against America, and that's kind of what drove them towards fighting and trying to beat the U.S. And they wanted the U.S. out. And the U.S. was actually their biggest concern, which is why they bombed Pearl Harbor. They weren't so much concerned about taking over Manchuria. They weren't really so worried about taking over, the different Chinese provinces. They just wanted to, they felt that they were just simply recapturing what they had lost in World War I. That's the way that they felt about it. And there was some, they had imperialistic beliefs. And at that time, they also thought that they were a superior race. They thought that they deserved to be the rulers of those provinces and countries, because they thought that they were better than those other people. And so, yes, you could say in that respect, there was an evil thread to what the Japanese were doing at that time. And that's sad to say. I don't think that that's I don't necessarily think that that's not the way it is now, obviously, right? The Japanese culture is incredibly nice. Everyone that I've ever met from Japan is nothing but humble and nice. There's a lot of cultural history there that I respect about the Japanese. And same with the Chinese. I have a lot of respect for the Chinese. But the bottom line is, the military might of the U.S. has been so dominant that we have entered a tremendous amount of peace because of it. Now, there are definitely, again, skirmishes. There are places where, the military has gone in and done terrible, horrible things. And the technology sector that's trying to help with that, that's trying to help the military, I think what they're really trying to do is reduce casualties, right? If that's the goal of the military, is to have more scoped, right? We want to make sure that we find the true enemy combatants, or, the people that are actually fighting us. And if we can come up with technology that helps us to properly identify the correct target so that we reduce civilian casualties, that's to be commendable. I think if that's what the technology is trying to do, then by all means, keep going at it. Keep doing that. I want that. That's exactly what I want. But I also don't necessarily want somebody who is working on that project and it's against their belief system. They don't want, they want to be more pacifist. They want to, they don't like the military. They don't like military, period. And they don't want to work on a program that works with the military, and they work for a company that's doing work for military. They want to quit because of that. I have no animosity towards that person. by all means, do that. If that's what your conscience tells you to do, by all means, go ahead and do that. And there's going to be other people that are going to take over that job. It's not that, there are enough people in this world that know what they're doing, that if that's your conscience, you go do your conscience. And other people who have a conscience about saying, I'm going to do this to try to better and save more lives in these military combats. That's the mentality that I think I would have if I was in that situation. If I saw a technology that I thought was going to be used for bad, I would stop it. I'm not going to be a part of this. But if I see that a technology is used for good, or I think is going to be helpful, then yeah, I'm going to do, if it's going to further mankind in some way or reduce the loss of life in those very stressful situations, yeah, I'd be proud to be a part of that. Again, it just kind of depends on your perspective. And I don't think my position is right. I don't think their position is right. It's just a difference of opinion. It's a different, I wouldn't say moral compass, because that's not really it. It's just a very different perspective. And I hope that, I don't begrudge them for not partaking, and I hope they don't begrudge me if I did partake. I don't think that we have just different beliefs, and we can disagree, and I would rather have a discussion with you about it. I would rather you come and tell me why. Why did you quit? I want to know why. Maybe there is something going on there that I would quit too. Maybe you know more about the program than I do, and therefore I should quit as well. That's the kind of discussion that needs to be had, not this animosity that we see online of you're pro-military, therefore you're a horrible human being. You just want to see babies killed, right? That's the kind of attitude you find online all the time in comment sections and Facebook and any sort of social media whatsoever. It's just this hard dividing line. If you do not agree with me, you are the worst possible kind of person on earth. I really wish that we could get away from that. Okay, I've been going on and on and on for that. Senator Negative says, I'm not a pacifist, just a Monroe doctrinist. I'm stuck in the 19th century. Yeah, Monroe doctrinist. Yeah, I mean, I'd say probably the Libertarian Party is a bit more in that same Monroe doctrinist kind of realm. Yeah. Okay, guys, I'm going to have to wrap it up here. I'm going to thanks so much for joining me. Happy Friday. Have a great weekend. And I will see you guys again on Monday at 7:30. Once again, every weekday, we do this at 7:30, unless something comes up. I try to let you guys know. But every weekday, 7:30 a.m., you guys can come, and that's Pacific time. You guys can come and talk to me, ask me questions. And I usually pick some sort of topic to discuss. And on Fridays, you guys get to pick the topic. So thanks for joining me today. Hope you guys have a terrific weekend, and I will see you next time.